The ink froze before it touched the paper. That was the first warning. He warmed the bottle between numb hands, breathing on it as though coaxing a dying spark back to life. The ink loosened reluctantly. A trembling line appeared on the page. Dearest Eleanor. His fingertips burned, not from warmth, but from the memory of her last touch. He closed his eyes, saw her standing at the harbor, scarf whipping in the wind, trying to smile through fear. He promised he'd return. He didn't know if that promise meant anything anymore. Outside the cabin window, the world was a pale, endless void. A blank page of ice and sky, merging into one silent, merciless horizon. The ship groaned beneath him, a deep, ancient sound, like something old shifting in its sleep. He stopped writing, listened. There it was again, a low rumble, a vibration crawling up the wooden ribs of the ship. The men claimed it was just pressure, the ice settling, nothing more. But he felt something deeper, a presence, a pulse, a heartbeat beneath the ice. He tried to continue. We are... The ink blotted. He frowned. A drop of frost slid down the page. He wiped it away with his thumb, smearing the word until it twisted into something unreadable. He dipped the nib again. The lantern flickered violently. Shadows lunged across the walls like claws. The wind howled. Not a storm, but a scream. Long, thin, human. He froze. Someone was calling for help. He rushed to the door, swung it open, and the cold hit him like a hammer. The deck was empty, just ropes frozen stiff, sails turned to iron by the frost, and deep silence that swallowed every sound. No footprints, no movement, no voices, just the ice, stretching forever. He stepped forward. The crack under his boot was quiet, too quiet. A fracture spidered across the ice, thin, delicate, alive. He knelt down, touched it. The ice pulsed beneath him, faint, rhythmic, like something breathing. He jerked back. His breath fogged in the air, breaking into shards. They weren't explorers anymore, not brave men charting unknown worlds. They were intruders, unwanted, uninvited, unwelcome. He looked at the horizon, a line so sharp it felt like the world itself could cut. He whispered into the wind, Eleanor, I'm sorry. He didn't know why he said it. Maybe because he could feel something closing around them. The ship creaked. The ice tightened its grip. The sun dimmed behind a curtain of frozen mist. He stared into the white void and understood the truth. A truth no one on the ship dared to say aloud. The Arctic didn't want them to leave. And the Arctic never lets its prisoners go. The days didn't pass anymore. They just happened. Time froze with the water. Hours, minutes, dawn, dusk, all swallowed by an endless white. Men moved slowly, like figures in an old painting left out in the snow. Their faces hollow, their eyes dull. Skin cracked from cold so deep it seemed to reach their bones. The ship felt less like a vessel now, and more like a coffin drifting on a frozen sea. He watched the crew gather around the iron stove, the only warm heartbeat left on board. Frost clung to their beards like silver threads. Breath rose from them in thin, ghostly clouds. Laughter was gone. Stories died. Even arguments, once loud and foolish, faded into whispers. Fear replaced everything. One morning, he walked onto the deck and found Thomas standing motionless, staring across the ice. Thomas, he called. Thomas didn't move. Thomas! He touched his shoulder, and the young sailor flinched violently, as if waking from a nightmare. What did you see? He asked quietly. Thomas's lips trembled. Something, at the edge of the world. What was it? I don't know, but it saw me. He walked away before another word could be spoken. The men whispered in huddles, close to the stove's weak glow, as if fire could protect them. Food's spoiling too fast. Coal is freezing. How is that even possible? The compass is spinning again. I dreamt of voices last night. I didn't sleep at all. He listened. He said nothing. On the third night, the ship shuddered. A sound rose from below, deep, hollow, ancient. A low moan that vibrated up through the deck and into their chests. The men froze. Even the flames in the stove bent toward the noise, as if the fire itself was afraid. The timbers creaked. The mast trembled. A lantern swung violently, casting jagged shadows that climbed the walls like living things. He felt the sound in his bones. Not ice. Not wind. Something else. Thomas looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. "You heard it," Thomas whispered. "Yes." Thomas's breath shook. "It's under us." He nodded. "Something's moving." Thomas stepped closer, his voice cracking. "And it's getting closer." A silence heavier than the cold settled over the ship. The wind died. The sky dimmed. The world held its breath. And in that suffocating stillness, he finally understood. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was waiting. The darkness came slowly at first. A shorter day, a reluctant sunrise, a sun that skimmed the horizon like a wounded bird before sinking back into the sea of black. Then one morning, it simply didn't rise. The men waited, counted minutes, watched the sky for a hint of gold. Nothing. Just night. A night that stretched from one edge of the world to the other. No one said the word winter. No one dared. He tried to write again. "Dearest Eleanor." But the ink was thick and sluggish, as if even it resisted waking in the dark. He struck a match. The flame sputtered. Barely survived. A tiny defiance against the eternal night. He leaned closer. The matchlight made his shadow long and distorted, stretching across the walls like something reaching for him. He felt watched, not by the men, not by the darkness, by the ship. The wind outside wailed through the frozen rigging like a chorus of distant voices, too human to be wind, too strange to be understood. The men began to hear things. Footsteps on the deck at hours when no one stood watch. Soft knocking from beneath the floorboards. A voice, or something pretending to be a voice, whispering a name no one remembered teaching it. Thomas refused to sleep. His eyes were red, trembling. "I saw someone last night," he said. "Where?" "Inside my dream." "That's normal." "No. He was here, in this room." Thomas's hands shook violently. He clutched his coat tighter. He stood by the door. Tall. Too tall. His face was wrong, like he was frozen halfway between a scream and a smile. He swallowed, and he was dripping. Dripping? Ice. Water. I don't know, but it sounded like footsteps melting. He looked up, terrified. And when I blinked, he wasn't gone. Just closer. The others didn't laugh. No one had the energy. He tried to reassure Thomas, but even he felt something lurking at the edge of the dark. The nights blurred into each other. Candles burned faster. Men muttered to themselves. Someone whispered prayers in broken pieces like shattered glass. One evening, the captain gathered them. "We stay calm," he said, but his voice trembled. "We wait for daylight." Thomas's hollow laugh echoed through the room. "What daylight?" The captain turned away. He had no answer. Days, if they could still be called days, passed in a choking darkness that seeped into the men's minds. Time melted. Hours dissolved. Reality bent. He woke once, unsure if he was alive or dreaming that he was alive. He lit the lantern. Its glow was weak, trembling. The flame shuddered, as if something unseen had passed between him and the light. He froze. The darkness around him felt thicker, heavier, more aware. He whispered to himself, "This is how men lose their minds." Then the lantern flickered once more and went out, just like that, swallowed whole. And in the pitch-black silence that followed, he heard a breath that wasn't his. Hunger didn't arrive with growling stomachs. It arrived with silence. The kind of silence that empties a man from the inside long before starvation does. Meals shrank, then vanished. Bread became dust. Salted meat hissed and steamed like something dying. Even the water tasted of rust and fear. Men lost weight, lost warmth, lost patience. One afternoon, 2 sailors fought over a crust of frozen bread, not with fists, with desperation, shallow breaths, shaking hands, eyes wide and animal-like. He stepped between them, but they clung to the scrap until it snapped in half. One sailor collapsed to his knees. "I swear," he whispered, voice trembling, "if I see you take more than your share again." His voice cracked. The threat hung unfinished in the air, too heavy, too real. The other sailor backed away, shoulders shaking. No one spoke. Hunger had turned men into something new, something raw, something dangerous. Days blurred, light faded. Their bodies grew weaker, their minds thinner. He found Thomas later, sitting in a corner near the stove, hands curled around nothing. "Thomas?" Thomas didn't answer. His lips moved silently, a prayer or a curse. Finally, Thomas whispered, "I can hear my stomach eating itself." The words sent a cold ripple through him more chilling than the Arctic wind. Food was gone. Hope was thinning. Only fear remained. One night, someone collapsed on the deck, a body small and curled like a child. He knelt beside him. The sailor's eyes fluttered open, clouded with pain. "I dreamt of soup," the man whispered. "What kind?" The sailor swallowed hard. "Warm." He died with that word on his tongue. The next morning, the captain gathered the men. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled around his coat. "We have to ration further," he said. A murmur spread. Anger, disbelief, grief, all tangled together. "Further?" someone repeated. "We're already rationing nothing." The captain met their eyes. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. Later, a fox appeared on the ice. Thin, starving, a ghost of an animal. The men chased it with a frenzy that terrified him. By the time they reached the edge of the floe, 3 men had collapsed, and the fox had vanished into the white void like a mirage. Back on the ship, the cook stared at an empty pot, eyes red and swollen. "I dreamed of feeding them all," the cook whispered. "But now, there's nothing left to feed." He touched the rim of the pot as if it were a coffin. That night, he dreamed of Eleanor. Not the warm, laughing Eleanor he left behind, but a pale version, her cheeks hollow, her smile weak, her fingers trembling with hunger. She reached for him. "Come home," she whispered. He woke with a cry, heart hammering. The cold devoured the sound. He staggered onto the deck, breath breaking into shards of ice. The sky stretched endless and empty. He felt something press against his ribs, a hunger deeper than the body, a hunger that clawed at the mind. He whispered to the darkness, "Please, let this end." But the Arctic didn't answer. The world stayed silent, suffocating, starved. And that was when he realized the ice was not the only thing dying. The men were dying too, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. Madness didn't strike all at once. It arrived like frost, slow, creeping, unnoticed, until it covered everything. At first, the men simply talked less. Then they stopped talking altogether. The wind became the only voice on the ship, a cold, ceaseless whisper weaving through ropes and broken sails. He noticed the change in Thomas first. Thomas, who once laughed the loudest. Thomas, who told stories to keep spirits alive. Now he stared at nothing. One morning, he found Thomas awake but unblinking, eyes fixed on the horizon. "What do you see?" he asked. "The land," Thomas whispered. "There is no land." "There is," Thomas insisted, voice trembling. "Right there, a dark shore, trees, smoke rising." He looked. There was nothing but white emptiness, ice and sky merging, no horizon at all. But Thomas kept staring, breath quickening, hands clutching the rail. "They're waiting," Thomas said. "Do you hear them calling?" A cold dread coiled in his stomach. Not again, he thought. Not another one. The crew's senses were unraveling. Sleep was scarce. Nights blurred. Dreams bled into waking hours. Once, a sailor ran across the deck, screaming, insisting he saw children dancing on the ice. Another swore he heard bells ringing beneath the snow. And one night, he woke to a whisper so soft he thought it came from inside his skull. "Turn back," it said. He bolted upright. The whisper repeated, closer, clearer. He grabbed a lantern, heart pounding, and searched the cabin. Empty. Only shadows moving with the flame. Only the creak of wood adjusting to the cold. But then he heard it again, behind him. "Turn. Back." He spun around. Nothing. His breath came fast. Too fast. He pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to ground himself. When he lowered them, he nearly screamed. A figure stood at the edge of the room. Tall, thin, barely human, wrapped in darkness. The lantern flickered, and the figure vanished. He stumbled to the deck, lungs burning with cold. The world outside was a vast, empty nightmare. Black sky, white ground, no division between them. And from somewhere in that void came a rhythmic thud. Slow, heavy, measured. He followed the sound until he found its source. A sailor was swinging an axe, striking the ice over and over, wildly, violently. "What are you doing?" he shouted. The sailor didn't answer. He just kept swinging, eyes wide, face twisted with fear and delirium. "Stop!" he yelled. The axe finally dropped from numb fingers. The sailor turned to him slowly, as if waking from a trance. His voice was barely a breath. "I thought I heard someone. Under the ice." Silence followed. He didn't know what to say, because part of him, the part starved and sleepless, had heard it too. Later, in the darkness of his cabin, he whispered to himself, "We're losing our minds." But the truth was worse. The ice wasn't just killing their bodies. It was consuming their sanity, piece by fragile piece. And deep down, where fear lives like a hungry animal, he felt a terrible certainty. The Arctic had begun to feed. Something snapped, not with a scream or a fight or a storm. It snapped with a whisper. "We can't stay here." The words drifted through the crew like smoke, thin and poisonous. Men who once obeyed the captain's every command now exchanged glances filled with doubt, fear, and something darker. He watched the tension grow. Quiet at first, then louder, like pressure beneath ice. One morning, the captain called the men to the deck. His beard was frosted, his eyes hollow but defiant. "We move tomorrow," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "We take the sledges. We search for land." A murmur rose. Someone laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was hopeless. "Land?" a sailor muttered. "There is no land here, only death." The captain ignored him. "We must try," he insisted. "We've tried. another man snapped. And every step we take just brings more suffering. The mood shifted, like wind changing direction. Dangerous. He stepped forward. We can't stay on the ship, he said gently. We'll freeze, or starve, or both. Then what? Someone demanded. Walk into nothing? Die slower? Thomas, pale and trembling, whispered, We won't all survive the journey. Silence fell. Everyone knew it was true. No one wanted to say it. The cook, voice cracking, asked, How will we choose who goes? Who stays? Who leads? The captain raised his chin. I lead, he said. A sailor spat on the deck. You led us into this. The words hung like a blade. For the first time, the captain looked wounded, truly wounded. The whisper grew into argument. Argument grew into a storm. Voices rose, hands clenched, emotions twisted into jagged shapes. He saw fists tighten, saw eyes glint with desperation, saw something fragile break inside the crew. Suddenly a crash. A lantern smashed to the ground. Oil spilled. Flame flashed. Men shouted. He grabbed a bucket, throwing snow onto the fire as chaos erupted around him. For a moment, it felt like the ship itself was burning, every plank and rope catching fire from the heat of human desperation. When the flames were finally smothered, only embers remained, and the smell of fear. The captain stood alone, back against the mast, breathing hard. Enough, he said hoarsely. We go tomorrow? I will hear no more debate. But no one answered. The men drifted away, not as a crew together, but as fragments pulled apart by cold and hunger and doubt. He stayed behind, watching the captain's silhouette against the dying lantern light. The captain whispered, almost to himself, They've lost faith. He didn't know how to comfort him. There were no words that could, because deep inside his own chest, he felt it too. A quiet, terrible truth. Their unity had frozen, cracked, broken. Not even the cold had done this. Hunger had not done this. Isolation had not done this. The breaking point had come from within. And once something breaks in the heart of a man, it cannot be mended by warmth alone. Dawn came without light, only a pale smudge behind clouds, barely enough to tell day from night. It's time, the captain said. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They packed what little remained, a few blankets, the broken compass, the empty logbook, and a map of nothing. Sledges groaned under the weight, not of supplies, but of the men's last hopes. They stepped onto the ice. It cracked beneath them like a warning. The ship faded behind them, a skeleton of wood lost in the fog. He turned once, but the silhouette was already dissolving into the white abyss. Every step was a fight. The cold bit through boots. Wind clawed at exposed skin. Snow blinded, erasing their tracks as soon as they made them. We must keep a straight line, the captain insisted. Straight line to where? Someone muttered. To land. What land? No one answered. The whiteness swallowed the question whole. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time dissolved in endless frost. Thomas stumbled. He caught him. You okay? Thomas nodded and collapsed. He fell to his knees, hands sinking into the snow as if reaching for something beneath the surface. I heard someone, Thomas whispered. There's no one here? But Thomas pressed his ear against the ice. Listen. He listened. Cold. Silence. Then, a faint thump. Distant. Rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. He recoiled, breath hitching. It's the ice shifting, he muttered. Thomas stared at him with hollow eyes. No, it's them. They're calling. Before he could respond, a scream ripped through the white void. He spun around. A sailor had sunk into a snow-covered crevasse, one leg swallowed by darkness, Help! Help! The men rushed to him. Slow, clumsy, exhausted. Snow crumbled beneath their boots. He reached out, grabbing the sailor's wrist. The man's fingers were icy stiff, grip weak. "I can't feel anything," the sailor cried. "Hold on." The ice beneath them groaned. A warning, a threat, a promise. "Pull!" he shouted. They pulled, with what strength remained in them. And in one desperate heave, they dragged the man out. He lay panting, sobbing, whimpering like a child. The wind howled over them as if mocking their victory. They trudged on, shaking, broken, half alive. As night came, they huddled together in a circle so small it was more instinct than order. No fire, no shelter. Only breath turning to frost and the sound of despair grinding in their bones. The captain sat apart, staring at the nothingness. He whispered to himself, too softly for others to hear, "Forgive me." He wasn't speaking to God. He was speaking to the men who would not survive the next day. And inside his own chest, beneath layers of fear and ice, he felt the truth spreading. There was no land, no rescue, no salvation, only the endless white abyss. And it was hungry. Hope didn't vanish. It faded, like a lantern burning its final drops of oil. By the third day on the ice, the men no longer walked. They drifted. Slow, uneven, not quite conscious, not quite alive. The wind carved patterns across their faces, turning skin pale and cracked like old parchment. The horizon remained empty. No land, no birds, no sound, but the groan of ice shifting beneath them. He counted the steps, not forward, not toward anything, just steps. "Keep moving," the captain whispered. It was not a command anymore. It was a plea, a thin thread of stubborn life holding them together. Thomas stumbled again. He caught him, but barely. Thomas's eyes were unfocused, like he was seeing two worlds at once. "Rest," he said gently. Thomas shook his head, frozen tears glistening. "If I rest, I won't stand again." He didn't argue, because he knew Thomas was right. Later, they paused near a jagged ridge of ice. One sailor fell face first into the snow and didn't move. They lifted him. His eyes were half open. Frost lined his lashes. "He's breathing," someone said. The captain knelt beside the man, pressing a hand against the sailor's chest. Barely. The wind howled, furious and wild. It felt like the sky itself wanted them gone. They carried him for hours, or maybe minutes. Time was a shifting blur of white and cold and pain. At last, the sailor stirred just long enough to whisper, "Leave me." The captain gritted his teeth. No man gets left behind. Another voice, bitter, trembling, replied, "We're not men anymore." No one corrected him. When evening fell, they stopped to rest. It wasn't a decision. Their bodies simply refused to move. They formed a circle, huddling together, sharing the last scraps of warmth. The captain tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He took out the compass. The needle spun and spun and spun, lost, directionless, broken. The men stared at the useless relic, as if watching hope crack open and bleed out. One sailor whispered, "Even the compass wants us dead." Thomas looked up at him. "No," Thomas said softly. "It only tells the truth. We are nowhere." No one argued. The emptiness around them felt enormous, alive even. He glanced at the sky. Clouds swirled above like something stirring, vast and ancient. In that moment, he felt small, tiny, a flicker in a storm. He closed his eyes, and in the silence, the last ember of hope finally dimmed. Not extinguished, just fading, breath by breath, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. And as the Arctic night folded over them like a shroud, he understood something terrible. It wasn't death they feared anymore. It was the thought of dying unseen, forgotten, swallowed by a world too vast to care. Night came without stars, just a velvet darkness so deep it felt alive. They huddled together in a small, trembling circle of breath and frost. No fire, no shelter, only fear shared like warmth. He dozed off, or thought he did, until a sound woke him. A low rumble, distant, rhythmic. Thud, thud, thud. At first, he thought it was his heartbeat, but no. It came from the earth, from under them, the ice. His eyes flew open. The others stirred, faces ghostly pale. "Did you?" he began. "Yes," someone whispered. "I heard it." The captain rose unsteadily. Snow clung to his beard like ash. "Stay together," he said, but the sound grew louder. Thud, thud, then a crack. Sharp, sudden. The men froze, not moving, not breathing. A fracture split across the ice. Long, black, jagged, creeping toward them like a living thing. Thomas grabbed his arm. "There's something down there," Thomas rasped. I told you. He tried to pull away, but Thomas's grip tightened, nails digging through layers of cloth. "It's calling," Thomas hissed. "They're calling." "Who?" Thomas looked up, eyes wild, pupils blown wide. "The ones who died before us." Wind whipped across the ridge, howling like a voice caught between worlds. The men staggered back from the spreading crack. It was wide now, deep, dark, a mouth opening. He knelt and peered into it. At first, nothing, just blackness. Then, movement, slow, shifting, uncertain. A shadow glided beneath the ice, elongated by distance, broken by fractures. He blinked. It was gone. He leaned closer, and the ice groaned like something waking. He stumbled back, heart hammering. "What did you see?" a sailor demanded. "Nothing," he said. It was a lie. He saw shape and motion and hunger. Or maybe he only saw his fear reflected in the dark. Another rumble shook the ground. The ice beneath them trembled, and the crack widened, splitting their path in two. The captain shouted, "Move!" They scrambled across the frozen terrain, legs shaking, lungs burning. The sound followed them, not footsteps, not voices, but something deeper. Pressure, pulse, breath, as if the ice itself was alive. Thomas fell behind, kneeling again, hands pressed to the ice. "They're under us," he whispered. "They want us." He pulled Thomas up, dragging him forward. "No," he hissed. "No one wants us. Not even death." But he wasn't sure, because when he looked back, he saw the crack close, as though a mouth shutting, and he heard the faintest echo of something like a whisper from far below the frozen world. "Soon." The wind swallowed the sound, but he heard it. He knew he heard it. And for the first time since the sun vanished, he feared not the cold or the hunger or the endless white, but the possibility that something ancient beneath the ice was listening and waiting. They walked until walking no longer meant movement. It became a rhythm, a ritual, a heartbeat carved into the frozen skin of the world. Left, right, left, right, until the words lost meaning, until steps became instinct, not choice. The storm had quieted, but the silence was worse, soundless, endless, suffocating. Thomas leaned against him, barely upright. "How far?" Thomas whispered. He didn't know. He didn't answer. The captain trudged ahead, moving like a shadow torn from its owner. His coat flapped in the wind, a dark flag of surrender. One man slipped, falling hard. No one rushed to help. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how anymore. The fallen man forced a breath, froze it into the air, and whispered, "Keep going." They did. Hours, or minutes, passed in a blur. The horizon remained empty. The world remained white. Thomas's voice cracked again. "Do you think they'll ever find us?" He wanted to lie, to say yes, to give hope, but the truth tasted bitter on his tongue. "Maybe," he whispered. Thomas nodded. He knew it was a lie, but he accepted it because lies were warmer than silence. The captain stopped suddenly. "What is it?" someone asked. The captain didn't speak. He simply stared ahead, eyes wide, filled with something strange. Not fear, wonder. He followed the captain's gaze. There, on the horizon, a shape. Dark, still, impossible. A line, a ridge, a mountain. No, a mirage. Heat shimmer without heat, color without color. A trick of a dying mind. But it was beautiful. And it was the first thing that wasn't ice in a long, long time. Thomas saw it too. His eyes lit with a flicker of life. Is that land? He couldn't answer, because part of him believed it, and part of him feared it, and part of him knew. It didn't matter. They would never reach it. The men stood in silence, staring at the phantom shore of a world that might exist or might not. The captain took a single step forward and collapsed. He fell like a tree, slow, heavy, final. For a heartbeat, no one moved. He knelt beside the captain, brushing frost from his beard. The captain's eyes were open, but empty. He closed them gently, fingers trembling. "Rest," he whispered. "You led us as far as you could." The wind carried the words away. One by one, the men sank to their knees, too tired to stand, too cold to dream. He held Thomas close, feeling the last warmth fading from his friend. Thomas's eyes fluttered. "Do you see it?" Thomas asked weakly. "The land. Do you see it too?" He looked at the horizon. The shape flickered. Bright, dark, bright, like a distant lamp fighting the night. "Yes," he whispered. "I see it." Thomas smiled. A small, fragile smile. Then his breath stilled. The wind sighed. Snow lifted. The world became quiet. He sat alone, surrounded by fallen silhouettes, scattered like broken statues across the white abyss. He looked once more at the horizon. Whether it was land, or illusion, or memory didn't matter anymore. He closed his eyes. Let the cold take the weight from his bones. Let silence wrap around him like a blanket. Let the great white world claim another name. His last thought was soft, a whisper, a promise. "Eleanor." Then everything faded into light.